The idea of these exercises is not just to stretch the muscles, but do it under a load, which gives elastic potential energy. To do this, each exercise must be done with great attention to detail, keeping an excellent full body postural position. So this requires a neutral spine and symmetry between your left and right sides. All of this can be found in my other videos. This integrates muscle chains, building relationships, and optimizes evolved human biomechanical movements. This is the only truly effective way to stretch, because improving the efficiency of your movements is what optimizes performance and prevents injury, not simply being flexible. To illustrate what I mean, just take a look at the next three pictures. When a cheetah sprints, it stretches at the same time. Indeed, without stretching, it couldn't sprint properly. As the cheetah is in this position, its muscles are optimally stretched to the point that they are loaded with elastic potential energy before they contract back, making for powerful, fast, and efficient movement. The stretch was obvious in picture 1, but note that now opposing muscle groups are stretched or lengthened. See its butt, chest, and neck, and lower back. This is a beautiful example of optimal length-tension relationships between muscle groups. One should note that we humans are also incredible examples of biomechanical efficiency. See if you can identify all the areas of stretching in this picture and then the opposite areas of contraction. Humans have very different biomechanics to a cheetah, but length-tension relationships between muscle groups work on the same principle. Muscles work in integration with the rest of the body and need to be optimally loaded while lengthened to work at maximum efficiency. Now, many people can't sprint and load their muscles in this way anymore, so we have to find ways of rediscovering this efficiency and elasticity, not just for performance, but for injury prevention for everyone. Ask yourself how long it's been since you've taken yourself through this range under tension and in a way you were evolved to move. We need this kind of movement for a healthy body capable of pain-free, efficient movement. So the first exercise here is a frontline drive. So this mimics the forceful thrust of a sprinting motion. So keep your feet about hip width apart. Throw the opposite arm and leg forward. The arm should be straight or slightly bent. Look at the tram lines on the bottom of the floor. That's quite a useful guide here to keep the feet hip width apart all the way through the motion. You should maintain a good neutral spine throughout, and you should feel a stretch somewhere in this front line, mostly in the hip flexors, or you may feel it in the abdominal area. So the next exercise is the spiral line step. For this one, follows the same principles as the previous exercise, but this time you're throwing the opposite arm and leg backwards. This should create quite a bit of rotation in your upper body, and if you maintain a neutral spine, you should feel some stretch mainly around your core and maybe also in your inner thigh area. You'll see the weighted version of this further on in the video, but for this exercise, basically again, hip width apart, good postural position to start off with. The first movement you're going to do is stick your butt back. The knees should bend only slightly, and then as you bring your arms forward and you sit back, you should get the stretch in your glutes, hamstrings, and maybe also in your calves as well. That we're looking for that back line of muscle and fascia. This exercise is called a sit and reach, and remember, it is a sit and a reach and not a squat. For this exercise, you need to stand a little bit more than hip width apart, and as you swing your arms back, make sure that the palm faces the ceiling. This opens up your pectoral muscles and enables you to get a stretch in this area. Also note how my feet are pivoting through so that my knees are staying in line with my hips, but also that I don't complete the pivot totally, and that as I reach the furthest point backwards, I'm not completing the pivot totally, so I want to get a stretch in that inner thigh area. You should feel the stretch pretty much in this kind of spiral line of muscle and fascia, maybe starting at your pecs, across your core and in your inner thigh. Next up, and this is very similar to the last exercise, except all we're really doing is changing the angle of the swing arc, so it looks a bit more like a golf swing. So this angle change will make quite a difference to where you feel the stretch, and you should feel this in your external obliques, in your core muscles. You might begin to notice that a lot of these stretches require quite a bit of rotation, and this is a very important aspect of this kind of stretching. For this exercise, we're going to incorporate the lower body into it a little bit more, so we get a strong push off and then a rotation with the upper body at the same time, very much following the same principles as the last couple of exercises. We then move on to trying to get this large rotation of the upper body incorporated in with your gait cycle. So as you walk, so this time I'm going to walk up and down the tram lines here that you can see on the floor. That's just a guide to keep me hip width apart. And I'm going to swing, do that spiral line swing at the same time. So as I step forward, my opposite arm should be coming forward. And then I'm going to swing with my palm facing up. This creates quite a strong thoracic rotation, and you must keep quite a good postural position here. It really helps if you look in the mirror to make sure that your hips aren't swaying all over the place and shifting from left to right. Your hips should stay pretty much front on. You want your legs focusing in on being in that sagittal plane and the rotation happening at the thoracic only. This exercise is the posterior chain loaded stretch. For all of the following exercises, you should be competent in finding a neutral spine, so see the static postural exercises video on my YouTube channel. This exercise stretches the posterior chain mainly at the glutes, hamstrings, and maybe the calves also. So there are some tips for proper execution. So you should maintain a neutral spine at all times. Don't bend the knees too much. The first movement should be the butt going backwards. Lift the weights as you go back. The knees shouldn't come forward. Hands at right angles to the elbow, and the upper arm and elbow should be in line with your back. So the elbow shouldn't go past your back. And finally, don't forget to breathe deeply through your chest as you do this exercise. So the loaded chest stretch. When you first do this exercise, perform it without any weight, as it can cause discomfort and impingements in the shoulder area, particularly if you have rounded shoulders. Only when you don't feel these impingements without any weight should you do it with weight, starting with just 1 kilo and building up. Slowly lower your arms with soft elbows and the palm of your hands pointing up. As your arms go down, without activation in your core, your back will start to arch. Activate your core by posteriorly tilting your pelvis to flatten your back to the bench. Doing this will also increase the stretch at the chest, because as you pull your stomach in, so too will it pull on your chest, as it is connected to the functional frontline chain of muscle and fascia, as you can see in the diagram. Don't forget to breathe and try to line up your feet and knees. This is a good stretch for your kind of upper arms, under your armpits and your back. Will also stretch your intercostal muscles quite nicely as well as you breathe. Again, to make this stretch work, your TVA must be engaged, and you should have a good neutral spine with alignment of knees, feet and ankles. To begin with, you should feel a stretch under the armpits. Then when you breathe in deeply through your rib cage, you should feel the stretch all around your rib cage. Next up is the hip flexor integrated stretch. Although I'm focusing on the stretch of the hip flexors here, it is also a great core and glute exercise. Once in the position shown, squeeze the shoulder blades back, take a deep breath through your rib cage to elevate the shoulders, then posteriorly tilt your pelvis. When you posteriorly tilt, you should feel a good stretch at your hip flexors. Once you feel this, then you pull back on the other leg, just like you're trying to slide your foot back, but without moving it from its position on the floor. This will create a strong engagement of your glutes, as long as your posture is in good alignment, cementing the relationship between your hip flexors, your glutes, and the rest of your body in your gait cycle. This exercise might stretch different people in different areas, depending on your postural problems and issues, but we're mainly aiming at the core, the external obliques and the inner thigh muscle. I'm feeling this mostly in the inner thigh, and if you perform the exercise correctly with good posture, you should feel it there also, at least to some degree. Notice how when I swing the dumbbell across my body, I pivot only slightly with my feet as my heels come off the ground, similar to some of the earlier exercises where I'm doing a lot of swinging with my thoracic spine. This enables the stretch of the inner thigh. We're going to finish off with just kind of a simple stretch of your neck muscles, so your scalenes and your sternocleidomastoids. So grab about a 5 to 10 kilo dumbbell, find a good postural position, just the same as in the other exercises, but this time just lean the neck in the opposite direction to the side that you're holding the weight. It's quite a simple stretch, just try not to go too far backwards with your neck, just trying to relax, and we'll finish on that exercise.